So I think anything to take away repetitive, more manual tasks that together are really, really important to make sure you've got the right data to make the right decisions. Anything that can reduce the time that accountants and bookkeepers have to spend doing that, isn't it for the better?
The backbone of the economy isn't forged by industry giants. It's built by small business, and yet almost half of Britain's small business owners don't even know if they made a profit last month. Today's guest is on a mission to solve that very problem. Kate Hayward is the UK Managing Director of Xero, one of the world's leading accounting software platforms, supporting millions of entrepreneurs, helping them take control of their finances. Before joining Xero, Kate built her career across 3 of the big 4 consultancy firms in both the UK and Australia. And in this episode, we cover the lessons Kate took from her consulting years and how that has shaped her leadership style today. We also cover why financial literacy in the UK remains such a major blind spot, the likely impact of AI on bookkeeping, and the skills the next generation of accountants and fintech entrepreneurs will need to thrive in a world driven by automation and AI agents. This is a really honest, energizing conversation. Kate is so passionate and really gives us loads of insight on the relationship between people and technology. It's a fabulous conversation. This is Kate Hayward. Kate Hayward, thank you so much for coming on the Tech Leaders podcast. How are you today in sunny Winchester?
Well, I'm well, but it is not sunny. It is another rainy day. And my 2-year-old said to me today, "Mummy, why is it raining again?" And I said, because we live in England.
Yeah, you try living in Wales. It's that time of year, unfortunately. But look, Kate, thank you so much for joining us. I've been really excited about chatting to you. We are indeed a Xero customer and a big fan of your product. So we were very, very excited that you accepted the invitation to come on. But first of all, let's start with the question we always ask our guests to kick off any interview. What does good leadership mean to you, Kate?
I mean, there's so many traits probably you could put here, but the one that always resonates with me the most is good leadership is being consistent. I always think when you're leading team, when you're leading people, them knowing how you're going to show up day in, day out, that they can trust who you are as a person, how you work, what you need is so helpful, because it means that they're not worried about managing you. They're worried about solving problems for the customers, for whatever work they're doing, whether it's a team. So consistency is always the big thing for me, because that casts, I always talk about leadership shadows. You never know who's in your shadow, who might be watching or who's following you. If you're consistent, your shadow is just really consistent for them. And actually they might be watching and learning from you in that way. So for me, it's always been about consistency.
That's such an accountant thing to say, by the way, but it is absolutely true. I mean, if you are, at the end of the day, you've got to get the respect of your troops. People respect consistency and the key word discipline, because consistency is discipline, isn't it? Consistency is about habit and being habitual, and that is often about discipline. So it's a brilliant answer. And thank you so much for sharing that. For the listeners who are unfamiliar with yourself and possibly Xero, can we maybe get a bit of an introduction, certainly in terms of like the early days and why you pursued the path that you did?
So I am an accountant, and I actually became an accountant, I've worked out, due to my family background, basically.
Your parents accountants, yeah?
No, they're not, which is interesting. So my dad left school at 14 and was a chippy or a carpenter, self-employed. And I remember vividly my mum, must have been monthly whenever she did it, the adding up machines. Do you know that you used to press with the white paper? She used to do his books every month or whenever it was. And then Terry, the accountant, would come round, and mum and dad, that meeting with Terry would be terrifying. Have a good month? Did we not have a good month? Then the bank managers meeting. Anyway, you can imagine a chippy, self-employed dad, the ups and downs of that. So the inconsistencies of that I remember as a child vividly. My dad, actually, very proud of my dad. When he was 40, he actually did his GCSEs, A-levels and degree, because he didn't want those ups and downs anymore. So he went into construction, but health and safety, to have basically a salary, because he wanted to provide more for us. So really proud of him. But he taught me, you need to work hard. You need to be educated. If you work really hard, you can be successful and you can be good at anything. He also said one other thing to me. Kate, there's 2 givens in life. death and taxes. So that's how I ended up thinking maybe there's something in accountancy that I want to do. I randomly did a biology degree though, because a family friend was actually a dentist. And I saw they had a nice house and he had a great job. I did work experience for a week and decided it's not for me. I don't want to be looking in people's mouths day and day, sitting on my own.
Did you actually study dentistry then, or just a generic biology degree?
I did the A-levels to maybe study dentistry. Luckily did my work experience and then just applied and said, I don't want to study accountancy at university. Obviously in the UK, you don't need to do that. So I was like, I actually really enjoyed studying and learning about biology. So I just did that as a degree, but probably knowing I wouldn't end up in a science field.
Yeah.
And then classic careers at university, there was Ernst & Young there on Careers Day. They were saying, you could come and work during the summer here. And the salary of like a summer internship from EY was incredible. So that's where it all started. But luckily, or unluckily, I don't know, I ended up doing strategy, operations, M&A. So I became very, not just on the accounts, I became very business focused. And so that's how I worked through some of the big four. I went to Australia and actually met one of the partners at Deloitte. He then ended up in Xero and brought me into Xero. So that's my weaving story of how I've ended up being the MD of Xero, from knowing about business, being an accountant, and then family, small business.
Absolutely. Brilliant overview. You spent a very formative part of your career at EY, global, Big Four consultancy firm. I know you worked at KPMG as well. What did you learn from the Big Four world that you take into your Xero experience?
I think there's something brilliant that those programs provide, and it's a way to problem solve. So very early on, you're taught, how do you understand a problem? How do you break it down? How do you analyze it? How do you bring that back together? And I think that business side is so relevant to anything you do. And then the other side that they're very, very good at is client relationships. So you learn how to talk to people, how to build trust, how to communicate effectively, but actually have challenging conversations and push people to maybe think differently, which I think is really, really important for any work, or just life skills, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, you worked for Deloitte as well, so you worked for all of them pretty much, apart from one. But interestingly, on Deloitte, then I was going to ask you about that because I know that was in Australia. I think KPMG and Deloitte were in Australia. What was that like then? You obviously up sticks and leave. Why did you go to work in Australia? And what's your memory of that experience now in terms of you growing as a person, as a business person? What did you get from it?
So the final chapter of my London career was actually mergers and acquisitions. And let's just say you work hard and you party hard at that stage of your life. I'd met my partner and we weren't ready to do the let's move out of London and settle down. We wanted a bit more of an adventure. And my brother actually still lives in Australia, and he sent me a picture of him on the Manly Fast Ferry commuting to work, as I sent him a picture of me on the Northern Line going to work. And I thought, something's quite wrong here. Maybe that's somewhere where I could go. So that was the rationale of just trying something new. Obviously, having the skill set of being at a Big Four meant we were quite transferable. But I actually quit my job and then left and then got a job there. And I think all it taught me was it's a really, really long way from home. It was quite scary. I had my brother, but you lose all your friends and you have to start again. But it's also so liberating. It was a great way of life in Australia. Obviously, it's not raining there most of the time. And so
you in Sydney, Kate?
Yeah, I was in Sydney.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm quite an active person and throw myself in. So I did the bronze medallion, which is the lifesaving. So I was a lifesaver on Bondi Beach. I'm not on Bondi Rescue though, unfortunately. And so there was lots of other parts that I put to it. But then from a career perspective, it was really fascinating because Australia is obviously, compared to London, the market felt smaller. So I got to experience a whole heap of other problems that I was consulting on that maybe in London you were very, very specific to a sector and a technical line. Whereas Australia, you kind of could work on anything. So that being thrown in at the deep end to a new country, a new set of problems, even things that you take for granted of cultural aspects or different business problems, even who are the big players that you should know about. It's not your Sainsbury's and your Morrisons, it's your Coles and everything. There's just inherent knowledge that you always feel like you're on the back foot. And how do you get over that? So there was lots of like micro learnings that I had. So I phenomenal experience, great friends, great working relationships. This time of year, when it actually gets to about February and I often go, why did we move back?
Yeah, I know. So you joined Xero at quite a fascinating time the company was just scaling globally. Yes, so it was a bit of a risk for you joining a scale-up from a very stable Big Four background. Talk us through how that opportunity came about and what type of organization did you go into?
So as I kind of alluded to earlier, I met a Deloitte partner in Australia. I was moving back to the UK, so I actually was trying to work out what I did next. I loved consulting on Australia, but I wasn't sure I wanted to continue doing that in the UK. I was kind of ready to be in a business, seeing how it goes through. It was a little bit fortuitous. As you said, Xero was going through a change. So it was going from being founder-led from Rod Drury over to its first CEO, Steve Vamos. And the Deloitte partner that I work with in Australia, Damien Tampling, he took over as Chief Strategy and Operations Officer. So it was the first time that Xero globally had a Chief Strategy Officer. As you alluded to, it wanted to scale globally and it probably needed a strategic path to do that. So essentially, and this is a big thing that I talk about when we're talking about leadership, there's three things that I always look for at work. The first one is really important to me, is the people. Do I respect the people? Am I going to learn something? Are they consistent? Do I enjoy spending time with them? At the end of the day, you spend 5 days a week at work for a lot of time, so I want to be around them. So he was the one that actually rang me and said, I need a strategic leader based in the UK because it's one of the key markets and we want them to scale. The other two bits I look for at work are, does it resonate with me from a values perspective and what they're trying to do? When he actually first contacted me, I was like, Xerox? What do you mean Xerox? I don't want to work for a printing. Why are you going to work for a printing company? Having Xero obviously weren't as big in the UK then. And then I looked and I was like, hang on, accounting, tech, and small business. This is like my trifecta of everything that makes sense for me. And then the opportunity, I think, is the third. Like, is it a good business model? Is there opportunity to grow? They're the three things that I look for. What's really interesting, and it talks a little bit about, I nearly didn't take the role. And the reason I nearly didn't take the role was because I just got married. And I said to Damien, this is a big job. I want to start a family. And he said, okay, good for you. Congratulations. What's that got to do with anything? And I was like, well, I want to take some time out to start a family. He's like, okay. And that is temporary. And this is going to be a multi-year opportunity. And we want your skill sets to do it. So I bring that up just because it's something that's not often talked about, of people taking leadership positions in high tech growth businesses when you're often trying to do two very important things in life at the same time, have a family and build that part of your life while building a good career. So that's how I ended up at Xero. So it was, I say part luck, good relationships. And then everyone says, yeah, but you also obviously earned the position, which yes, I work hard and it was good. Joining Xero at that time, fascinating. So Gary Turner was the original MD of the UK. Still loved working with Gary and still in contact with him now.
Was he the founder, Kate? Or
so Rod Drury was the founder from New Zealand, but he was the founding of the UK business. So he started the UK basically.
Yeah, okay.
So when I joined, it was exactly that. It was going from a CEO, founder-led business to a CEO-led business. And I'd say we're in the gangly teenager stages of everyone was passionate. There was a real problem to solve. The customers love Xero. There was enough scale that there was some defined roles, but it wasn't at like heavy process, clear opportunity definement, clear execution. It was very much, we're going after it and we just keep going. So I took on the global strategy role. And again, from the UK, it was great to see cloud accounting was just at its beginning. And you would still argue it still is today. There's so much opportunity still to go. So I think the risk for me felt worth it because the business model and the opportunity was solid and I believed in it. And we had a really good product. Like I did my research, the product was good, the customer research was good, and then the people was good. So I felt like it was the accountant in me. It was a risk-based decision and I thought it was a good one.
Yeah, well, it's turned out to be a good one, I suppose, isn't it? And yeah, I mean, that's really so much to unpack there. I think one thing the direction I wanted to go in, though, is that you just seem to essentially get promoted every year or every other year from the global strategy executive GM and now the managing director. Can you talk us through that journey? How did that happen so quickly? And what is your current role, Kate? So it's a double question again. What do you do as managing director of Xero?
So let's start with that. As the managing director for Xero UK, I am responsible for everything that our UK customers experience. So I'm involved in the product development, what we put on into shipping. I'm responsible for our go-to-market, so how we sell to customers, how we market to customers. I'm responsible for the over 650 people in the UK that work for Xero UK. So it really is the cross-functional end-to-end delivery into the UK market. So that's my job in a nutshell. And then how I got there. So I started with global strategy, and then I actually had the baby. Like, it was very good. Came back.
Fantastic.
And then I came back, and we had done a few turns of the strategy, and I was quite clear. We were all quite clear what we needed to do, but strategy is only as good as the execution that you are able to deliver. And there was a part of me that was itching to get into delivery. So I actually also wanted to be much more focused on the UK. Having had a baby, sometimes global hours, I wanted to just feel the customer impact. So I took on the director of operations role for UK and EMEA, and that gave me a real sense of how to execute. So it was still that strategic execution with real operations of the business. I then went and had a second baby, and Xero supported me through that.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And then I came back from maternity leave, about a month before I came back from maternity leave. We'd then transitioned to a second CEO. So we'd gone founder to first CEO to second CEO. Our second CEO is Sukhinder. She is a global CEO based in the Silicon Valley. And her strategy was a refresh, but being very, very prioritized. You may have heard of it, but it's the 3x3. And one of those threes was the UK. And her feeling was, it's one of our key markets that we must invest in. I want a leader to wake up every day to think about the UK. And so I came on maternity leave. I was promoted again to take over country manager of the UK. So that's where the journey, it was my first P&L of leadership of the UK. I still reported into an MD who had a portfolio of other countries as that kind of support system to not just leave me at the deep end to taking over one of our biggest regions. But I think my strategic mindset, my operations and my commercial mindset, it gave me the skill set. And then being an accountant, loving small businesses, all of that together meant I was in an ideal candidate to actually lead the UK. And then after that, I think I had a year of being the country manager and almost training wheels off. Okay, you're ready. You're the MD. Take on full responsibility for yourself. So again,
a crash course then, Kate. Yeah, thrown basically. In the deep end.
A dummy's guide to being a country manager onto an MD. And so, yeah, I got promoted to the managing director role April of this year. So huge thanks to Xero for supporting me to do that.
Yeah, that's incredible. It sounds like they've supported you just, it's very impressive, the support they've given you across the board. And one of those things, and this is something that stood out for me when you were talking, is how they supported you through 2 pregnancies. And, maybe let's go with this one. So many women do feel, at conversations on this podcast about this a couple of times, many women in leadership roles feel they have to choose between a sort of career progression and starting a family. So what's been your experience? And you've obviously given us a bit of an answer on that already. But what I want to ask is, how can organizations create an environment where women don't feel that tension?
So I'm a big believer that the two can exist. I didn't believe it before, but I think having gone through it, I'm quite passionate that we should be able to do it. The environment that is required, basically open conversations about what that can look like. I think the thing that we sometimes, the way that I've done it, so I actually, again, hired someone that was pregnant. I think the thing that we shouldn't say is you can have it all and you can do it all. You can't do it all and have it all. You can have it all, but you can't do it all. And I think there's a slight difference there. But would you really want to? You can't do everything for your family all day and do a big job or a medium job all day. You have to balance and you have to prioritize. And I think 100%. Finding that, and that's true for anyone, whether you're a male or female, that's just life. You have to work out that balance of what that looks like.
Verify that, Kate, for sure. I got 2 daughters, 7 and 10 is tough. It's tough.
It is tough. And I think having that, I think individually you have to work out where your balance is and what you're happy to sacrifice in some ways or prioritize. So someone asked me the other day, do you mind being away from the kids? And I was like, I hate being away from the kids for a long period of time. But if once a week I miss drop off and bedtime, I'm okay with that. That doesn't, for 6 other nights, if I'm there, I'm okay with that balance. But some people may not be, and that's okay. So I think there's a part there where personally, everyone just has to work out where they are. I think then support from a businesses is having open conversations. So actually, if you want to work flexibly, is that going to work in your role? Some roles, that's just not possible. And that's okay to have that honest conversation of, let's not try and kid ourselves that that's required, but are there other things where you're suited and how can we make it work for both sides? I think it is that partnership that you need to have versus all for one or all for the other. And the big thing I'm a believer in, when people go on maternity leave and come back, treat them as a new starter. Because a year, 6 months, 9 months, especially in high-tech growth businesses, things change quickly. And so you come back and you're like, I don't know half these people. This is grown. This has changed. And people forget. And then you have this worry that you're not up to speed and you're trying to get up to speed and come back. So just treat them as a new starter. Have an onboarding process, get them back in. I think that's one of the very tactical things that we try and do to really support.
Oh, that's cool. I've not come across that before, but that totally makes sense. I think, things are improving, I think slowly but surely, but we do need to get this sort of stuff out there so that this progression does sort of proliferate faster, because, there are certainly organizations who still stigmatize parenthood a little bit for female leaders more than men, I think, in my opinion. And I think it's something we do need to work on collectively as a society.
I think it's still the same for men. Like, I still think it's really hard if you are a dad and you get the phone call to pick your kids up from school. I still think that's hard.
Yeah.
So I just think
I get that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. The one thing I think with dads is you do sort of almost get told, oh, shut up, you're just the dad. I got a friend who lives in Romania, and it's sort of government legislation for the parents to have 2 years paternity leave and maternity leave in one. Yeah. So basically, you get to split it however you like. So the woman can take a year, then the man can take a year. They can take a year together. Do you know what I mean? As long as it's collectively 2 years, which I thought is fab, isn't it? That's a really good system.
We've got friends in Sweden where the mum takes the first year and then every dad takes 12 to 15 months so that the woman goes back to work. They're not worried about the childcare. So I just think what a great, there's things like that I just think are, incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the subject of children, I just remembered as we were talking something that I did read about you, that you are a very keen gymnast.
Yes.
You'll be pleased to know my 2 daughters are gymnasts as well.
Oh,
okay.
Yay.
So the question I've got, because I wanted to bring that up, but the question I've got for you is, being a gymnast is all about discipline. It's a really difficult sport, very difficult sport for young girls to take on. Yeah, like I said, discipline, hard work. How is being in gymnastics for the early part of your life? Has that shaped you at all in terms of your business outlook?
Yes, one for the good and one that I probably have to work on a lot, I would say. I think one for the good, someone actually said to me yesterday, Kate, I think you've got a time machine. How do you get so much done? I swear you've got another 24 hours in our 24 hours. And I think having been a gymnast where you train a lot, you work hard, you have to be efficient, effective, and you think about how to break it down. I've got gymnastics, then I've got school, and then I've got this, and then I want to see my friends. So you get very, very good at being disciplined in that regard. The other thing that it teaches you is practice makes progress. Yeah. If you keep practicing, it will work. If you keep work really, really hard, it's similar to the 100-hour concept. But I think in gymnastics, you literally see it. Those that are in the gym all the time, you do continue to go. And at that, I am like that at work. If I know something's struggling, if I keep going, I'm just determined. I've got that extra gear of a drive to not give up. I think the thing that it does have, though, which I am very aware of now, and I'm also conscious of, as my 2-year-old started doing forward rolls I've not taught her in the living room the other day. I'm like, oh no, she's going to be a gymnast. There's a sense of perfectionism with gymnastics that you have to be careful of. So you obviously start from your score, then everything's wrong is mark off, mark off, mark off, mark off. So you always feel like you have to be perfect. And I think that's not healthy in business, because perfection is the enemy of the good. Again, it's about progress, it's about learning. So you have to flip that on its head, which is gymnastics as well, because you keep learning, you keep trying. But the drive, the hard work, the discipline are all great things, I think, for business. But just that perfectionism is something that I have to temper. Yeah,
because perfection is sometimes paralysis, isn't it?
Correct.
You know what I mean? And done beats perfect, as the old adage. I think that's an Australian taught me that. But I think sometimes you've got to get stuff. If you are striving for perfection, it will literally cripple you, and you'll end up with no end product because you're looking for something that's just unachievable. So
well, and I remember in my early days as an analyst, I'd obsess over a piece of work until it's perfect, and then I'd hand it in, and any red line, I'd be like, oh, I failed. Because at gymnastics, you'd be like, oh, mark off, and that feeling you kind of have to get through of actually no, share early, share progress. Red lines are okay. It's about improving. And I think that mindset's slightly different to gymnastics.
Yeah, for sure. This episode was brought to you by Be Digital. Be Digital support leadership teams to optimize cost and get more out of technology investments. Be Digital and the team have unrivaled expertise with technology license management and data remediation, and are therefore perfectly positioned to help prepare organizations for AI technology capability. And on the last point, Be Digital have just developed a cutting-edge AI readiness assessment, which provides tech leaders with a platform they need to make well-informed decisions about AI adoption strategy in 2024 and beyond. Go to bedigitaluk.com to find out more and get in touch. Know Your Numbers initiative. I love that. I don't know an enormous amount about it. We did a bit of research on it, but let me kick off with this. Recent research found that nearly 40% of small business owners don't know whether they were profitable last month. I totally believe that. I would argue it's probably more than 40%. But, some people maybe bend the truth on these things when they're giving you their feedback, and more than half avoid their finances altogether. Yep, that's definitely true. So what do you think is driving this confidence gap among entrepreneurs? Why is this like this? Why do people ignore the numbers so much?
I think we have a real issue in the UK, a real stigma about putting your hand up to say, I don't understand. And why? I think genuinely, where do we get
weird that is, though, isn't it? Yeah, that's absolutely right. We're terrified of making a mistake, which is, the Americans are not like that.
Exactly. But I think there's two bits. We have a culture where we're not big risk takers, but we linked to that. We would probably take risks if we understood numbers more, but why don't we understand the numbers? Where are we meant to know about numbers? Where do we get taught about numbers? And if you think about the life cycle of it, in schools, it's probably not taught across all schools. Actually, the Department for Education have got a new curriculum coming out today, and I'm hoping that this comes up more, but it's not embedded in schools with a very practical way. I often say, I love trigonometry, but I mean, did you learn about pensions, compound interest? Did you learn any of those life skills that you need, credit cards, etc.? Then there's no entrepreneurial or small business skill set that you're then taught. So you might go to university and learn about being a business owner, or you might take an apprenticeship and be very hands-on, but where's the apprenticeship for entrepreneurs? And I think the big thing that we found is underrepresented groups. So whether that's economic deprivation or females, this actually impacts them more. And so we're basically just trying to spark the conversation of, shouldn't financial education just be a given across the whole life cycle? And actually, if we did that and there was less stigma about not understanding your numbers and you had some of the basics, maybe you'd ask more questions, maybe you'd understand a bit more. And that's not to belittle or say it's their fault, because why should they know if no one teaches them? So essentially, Xero's Know Your Numbers is free financial literacy content, accessible to anyone in snippets to just help to try and spark that conversation to understand the basics of actual financial information.
Financial literacy was non-existent in schools when I was growing up. I understand that it is a little bit now, but it's still very basic, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, it's just what a profit and loss statement, an income and expenses statement looks like, and what interest rates are. I mean, just things like that. I mean, these are more valuable to you as an adult than calculus or algebra ever will be, So it's crazy, isn't it? But how are you seeing this play out? And are you seeing light at the end of the tunnel, Kate?
I hope there will be. I think we're just at the start. We're calling for government to do a bit more. So we're actually working with Small Business Britain on something called the Maple Review, which is looking to identify and dismantle the barriers to entrepreneurship caused by economic deprivation. So we're doing research at the moment of what could that look like. I think financial literacy will be part of that. I think the Know Your Numbers content has gone out, and we've actually also started an ambassadorship program, whereas we know accountants and bookkeepers are brilliant for small businesses. When you've got an accountant or bookkeeper, the success of the small business is amplified. So we've actually set up a mentorship program where accountants and bookkeepers can support small businesses looking at some of this content to make sure they understand. So we've had a huge number of accountants and bookkeepers sign up for that because they're so willing to help. And so really hoping that we can actually start a bit of a movement to just break down the stigmatism and then get this movement, get people understanding. Because even if it does go into schools, you've got whole generations of small businesses that never had this. So I'm excited for what we could start.
I think that is just imperative that we see this through, because I think it's so important. It's so ridiculously important. I was chatting to someone about this on the podcast before about, you look at the top technology startups and scale-ups that have come out of the Western world in the last 30 years. And, at the very top end, they're all American companies. The only European success story at the top end now, is Spotify. And there's just not enough success stories coming out of the UK. There's entrepreneurialism, there's hubs in London and other parts. There's some good work being done, don't get me wrong, but there just needs to be more, I think, more entrepreneurialism in the UK, and there needs to be more capital flowing in for UK businesses to scale. So I don't know, what's your take on that?
100% agree. And I think that's the bit of, if you think about the economy, if we got more small businesses, a small percentage of small businesses scaling a little bit more or growing a little bit more, the impact on the economy would be huge. I think the thing that I would touch on here is that in the UK, we have a habit of calling everything a small business. That can be like a one-man solopreneur all the way through to a larger employing business. And they're quite different. And the access to capital is very different. So that middle set of kind of maybe a bit bigger than a one-person sole trader, access to capital, access to information, knowing what they can get hold of, understanding their numbers, there's a huge gap here. And I think actually for them to understand the stability, the growth potential of their businesses and the support they could get, and then getting access to capital to grow because they're good businesses. I think if we could try and solve that, it would be great for the small businesses. It would be great for our economy. It'd be great for our communities. I think one thing I always think about is when we talk small business, you're talking about your high streets, you're talking about your communities, you're talking about the things you will interact with as people every day. How can we support them more? It's not just big business. Small businesses represent a huge part of the economy in the UK. Yeah, they're the backbone. And I think what we're proud British people as well.
Yeah, I do think it comes back to this culture of being scared of making mistakes, though. I honestly think that's the root cause of the lack of entrepreneurialism. Because, and what I mean is that it's not just, being afraid to make a mistake is one thing on a small scale. But if you, across a lifetime, that is the difference between taking a risk, leaving your job to set up a business to do something you're passionate about because you're scared of what your family will say. You're scared of what your friends from school will say. There's an was the old proverb, isn't it? The tall nail gets the hammer, or the tall poppy syndrome gets chopped down. And that just sums up British culture towards entrepreneurialism. It is changing, though, I think. But
it is changing. And I think on that, it was funny, someone said, an American colleague talking about access to capital. And in the UK, you'd be asked, how many times have you failed? Oh, failed, you're a bad candidate. In the US, it's how many times have you failed? You haven't failed yet, go away. Like you need to fail 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, it's a badge of honour. Yeah,
it's a badge of honour. You've tried, you've failed, you're working hard, you've learned. I just think I agree with you.
Yeah, it's a bit sad, isn't it? Mm. So look, Xero is well known for simplifying accounting, I think is fair to say, which is a very welcome, probably the reason why you guys are very successful. So within the domain of bookkeeping, how is technology now enabling businesses owners to make better, more proactive decisions? Do you know what I mean? How are you leveraging technology to help entrepreneurs right now?
I think the main basis, again, you've touched on about Xero, it was simplifying recording information in a way that made sense. So business owners and their advisors could collaborate to understand their business. So that goes from pulling data in from all the different sources of your invoices, your expenses, your bank, bringing it all into one platform, and then bringing the smarts, the automation. I mean, we're going to probably end up talking about AI, but even before the generative AI.
If we have to.
Before that, the machine learning, the automation, the categorization to simplify things, even bank feeds, being able to have a live bank feed to see transactions in one platform. It's all essentially to bring it in one place in a coherent way so you can see the numbers, like we were saying, your profit and loss, your cash flow, to make business decisions together. And I think that's always is to make life easier. So people can spend less time doing the very important but more manual jobs, and why they don't get into small business, so they can spend more time on the business. So we've been doing that for years and we'll continue to do that.
Yeah. And that's the perfect segue, I think, into AI, Kate, isn't it? Because AI agents is the next level of this, isn't it? So we did talk a little bit beforehand about AI replacing elements of what a bookkeeper and what an accountant does. And maybe I said it in a bit of a negative tone and you pushed back and said you see it as a good thing. So let me just get your thoughts on it then. Let me ask you the broad question. Is AI, this is a bit of a bonehead question, AI, is it good for accountants or bad for accountants? Over to you, Kate.
I would say it's good. And let me break that down. I think, what is AI, or what's AI in accounting and bookkeeping? We just spoke about a lot of accounting. Some entry part of accounting is data entry. But that is not what accountants and bookkeepers do today.
No.
If anyone thinks...
Nor do they want to do it.
Nor do they want to. So if anyone thinks that's all they do, they're very wrong, basically. I can't put it any other way.
Absolutely.
They are the trusted advisor to many, many small businesses. They are their source of truth. They are their support system. That is who they go to. If you think through the COVID period, who were the busiest people that helped small businesses? It was the accountants and bookkeepers.
Yeah.
So I think anything to take away repetitive, more manual tasks that together are really, really important to make sure you've got the right data to make the right decisions. Anything that can reduce the time that accountants and bookkeepers have to spend doing that, isn't it for the better? And why? Have more time to actually analyze that information, have more time to have deeper customer relationships with their customers, to have more conversations. Maybe they'll have more time to be like, hey, you've been having a great business for 3 years. I also know there's this grant that you could get from the government. Have you thought about growing? Isn't it great and exciting that actually small businesses and accountants and bookkeepers could have more time to have those conversations? And the other bit to this, so I've been on the road recently. We have the Xero road shows. And then I was in Cornwall with one of our great accountants and bookkeepers. And he specializes, no coincidence, with a lot of farmers in Cornwall. Do you think any AI agent is going to understand the intricacies of farming in Cornwall versus farming in the Lake District versus a fishery in Wales? That deep customer, you're just never going to build that level of understanding. And I think this is, again, I go back to the point, every small business is so different. That contextual pieces, all we're trying to do is speed up, automate, and help so you can have those very personalized, tailored conversations. So that's my view of AI for accountants and bookkeepers.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. So some really good points there. I think that it's the nuances that are the thing. You just can't train models to have that level of nuanced thinking. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
and small businesses are so nuanced.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, most new small businesses, you get the obvious outliers, like where there's a big market like hairdressers and corner shops and things. But in the professional services world, for instance, most of the small businesses emerge as very specialist organized. You know what I mean? That's what we do. We're an IT asset management company in a very specific domain of IT and procurement. You know, so yeah. I mean that's and it's that knowledge which is really difficult to replicate with technology and agents, isn't it? But so, are you seeing any like job losses as a result of AI agents taking accountancy-based capabilities off businesses right now? Because I mean, you know, with these things, you generally do get a lot of job losses, and then you get a net positive, you know, influx of job roles and new careers as a result of the technology, don't you? In previous innovative periods, like .com boom, for instance, and things like that. So what are you seeing, Kate?
So I think if you actually go back to what was happening in the accounting and bookkeeping industry before AI, there was a huge issue with attracting talent. So we know that there'd been a number of people that hadn't been doing accounting qualifications. The industry has never had a sexy, probably isn't the right word, but that attractive, sexy vibe that maybe other industries have. So there'd been a real shortage of talent, and it was something actually worrying the industry. And I think, so how again do you flip it on the head? Maybe we don't need the large numbers of people coming into the industry that we maybe did before. So I actually think this is a way to provide leverage to accountants and bookkeepers. We're thinking, how do you have an AI agent? Like, you'd have maybe a number of juniors in your staff, but how do you actually continue to make sure that the profession is attractive and bring on new people and junior talent that's actually got different skill sets? So maybe they're AI native, they're tech native, they've got deeper, we talk about it, client relationship skills, that they can actually have a lot more problem solving skills. So I actually think it will be a change to how we think about the profession of what skill sets we need and how you bring talent up and through. But I don't at the moment, and we can't see anything where people are losing jobs. If anything, there is so much work for them to do. It means they can take on more clients. So it's not as though the work's drying up and they're getting rid of people. It's almost the opposite. They can go out and serve more. So it should make them more profitable if they think about it. It should mean that they can have better relationships with clients, do more advisory type work. So yeah, I'm actually very excited and optimistic about the profession.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you talk us through what Xero is doing right now in terms of AI, in terms of helping small businesses and helping accountants work smarter? Like, what are you doing right now, and what's on the sort of R&D product roadmap for the future in terms of particularly interested in agentic AI? I don't know if you're looking at that, but so what are you doing and what are you going to be doing for small businesses and accountants?
So if you hadn't, Jax is just our Xero. So we launched that over a year ago, but the first use cases were about small businesses. So it's helping them with things like invoice creation and email. So very much some of those repetitive tasks for small businesses. At XeroCon Brisbane this year, and then at our roadshows here in the UK, we spoke a lot more about some of our agentic AI use cases and workflows. The big one that I think is getting a lot of excitement is AI bank rec. So essentially, bank reconciliation is a key bookkeeping job to be done. And how do you make that work for you? Essentially, we want all of our agentic AI to work for you. So how do you wake up in the morning and you've had 500 reconciliations to do and it's done 400? I think the thing that we're doing differently and that we're getting good feedback on is we're making it very transparent.
Yeah.
AI in financial software needs to be safe. It needs to be very trusted. The big thing we know is there is no point doing it if it's wrong. So it's more hassle to get it wrong than to stop and pause and say, we can't reconcile this because actually it's different to what we've seen before, or it's new, or we don't understand. So I think that's some of the AI that you'll see Xero coming through, that because it's financial information, we're taking a very, very secure and positive way to make sure we're doing it properly. There's a lot more coming through from our accountants and bookkeepers as well. So Xero Partner Hub is what it's called. There'll be a lot of use cases coming through for that. I think the other one that we see and we feel is there's lots of talk about agentic AI and agents doing specific tasks.
Yeah.
One of the things we hear about a lot is how do you bring it all together? So the example I always give is you have to do one workflow, but you've got 7 tabs open to do it. You have to go here in Outlook. Then you have to go here to do the report. Then you have to go here to do something else.
Story of my life, yeah.
I have to go to the government website to know which loan. Then I'm going, and I'm like, okay, 7 work. And then you open up a new doc to get it done. How do you bring all of that into one place? And I think that's where we're excited to think about financial insights launched into Xero, where you can instantly go to email and you're not just my brain. The scattergun brain, like how do you bring that all into one place? So I think it's not just about the AI agents itself. It's actually how do you do the interconnected workflow in one platform so the downtime isn't lost in between.
Yeah, that's the really exciting part about agentic AI is the multi-platform collaboration to achieve a goal. So if I can have an agent sitting in my browser or in my desktop, or even better, that can respond to my emails because it can detect what the email is about. It'll know what I'm going to say. And then it also maybe would, do social media for me and all this kind of, all other things. It can respond to Teams messages or whatever. But doing it multi-platform, that is like the dream, isn't it? That is the dream. And that capability is there, but it's difficult. It's not really rolled out to the typical business owner right now, is it?
Correct. And I think the bit around, there's use cases where that's easier. And then there's use cases that you have to be careful of. Like we often say to accountants, please make sure you're not uploading loads of financial information into a generic tool that maybe you haven't got the right security settings for. So that's the bit that you have to be very careful of in our industry to making sure that it's secure.
Yeah, sure. So let me put you on the spot then in terms of accountants and business advisors in your world, okay? The next generation of accountants and business advisors, what will they need to bring to the table that perhaps wasn't essential 10 years ago? What skills are important going forward for accountants, do you think?
The 3 for me is being able to have good personal soft skills and relationships.
Yeah.
That is what they're going to win on, because I think as doing very, very good financial information, part of that will be easier to do and more automated. So actually being able to connect with your customers, being able to connect with small businesses, being able to build those relationships. And that's what, when you hear about great accounting and bookkeeping and small business relationships, that's what resonates with them. I think the other one is, and this is something that's always worried me, when you're a junior, you learn the hard graft of how things work. You reconcile things, you do it all. If you don't have to do that in your development or your learning, how are you going to have the oversight skills to test something or to check it? Do you know, you look at something now and you're like, that feels off because you've just got those years of experience. Interestingly, a lot of the professional bodies have been doing a lot of research on this. And when they bring together AI and financial learning, they're seeing that the skill sets are still there. So I'm positive that actually with the right education, that'll be there. But I think critical thinking and problem solving and checking. So thinking of your AI agents as like your managers and skipping a few levels almost to be able to, I always say, I wouldn't put one of my managers or one of my analysts out in the wild with a really senior client to start with. So how do you build that skill set. And then the last one is just tech skills. Like even we talk about this even at Xero. AI, the proliferation of AI is huge. A year ago, I wasn't really using AI, but I think we're all going to multi-generations. I think we've got huge difference in generations in the workforce today. If you think about all the different types, that's only going to continue. How do you continue to, for the new people, they're probably going to be better at this than maybe some of the generations we have in the industry now. How are you going to leverage their skill sets and that? So I think they're the three that I would boil it down into.
Yeah, I think the last one, I agree with you, by the way, but I think the last one particularly, I think the ability to interact and almost overlay with technology is going to basically, if you can do that well, then you have a superpower whereby you're an expert in everything. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
to a certain point, of course. But and that comes from good prompting, but also knowing how to get the most out of the model. And crucially, for the model to know about you. So it's got all the context. Do you know what I mean? So I would work with a different couple of LLMs, Grok and, Claude and stuff like that. But ChatGPT knows more about me than anything else. So because I've been using it for longer. So it's got all this context. So every answer I get is within the context of what I've told it in a specific box within the settings. If anyone's not seen that, I would recommend you fill that in. But also it remembers previous threads. So I get everything within the context of what's gone on before. That's like unbelievable. I mean, every prompt is like significantly shorter. I can voice type a little prompt into it and get a really good answer because it's got all this context on me. That's when it starts adding serious value, doesn't it? But if that was sitting in my desktop and was able to interact with all the different platforms, I mean, that's the dream, isn't it? Kate, you strike me as someone who's very organised. Am I right?
I try to be. Well, my husband would say not at home.
You're allowed to be unorganised at home. Well, I'm not, but yeah. But what I want to say, can you just give us some tips in terms of staying organised, staying productive? You're managing director of a huge UK entity, super busy, 2 kids. You've got to be organised. You ain't got a choice. How do you stay organised? How do you stay productive? Just little tips, maybe tools, platform. I don't know. How do you do it? How do you manage to pull this off? So
I always think you fill from your own cup first. So before I can be organised, there's 2 things that I need to have, and that's sleep and exercise. So in my week, those are 2 things that I don't ever, they have to happen. So they are blocked every week and they're my non-negotiables. And if something really needs to come in the top of that, you're going to have to really persuade me. So I think having very, very dedicated time that are non-negotiables is really important. I'm then also just quite fastidious in regularly checking, reviewing. We use Gemini. So Gemini, I've got a gem, which is what Gemini's platform is, that goes into my diary and like, am I spending too much hours on meetings? Is there agendas? I'm no agenda, no attender. I'm like, what's the meeting for? The purpose. So there's very just like small tacks like that. I've actually note system. I use Notion because I think it's brilliant and that helps plug in. So I think it's just I'm quite routine based. Like even with the kids, I do drop off these days. They're non-negotiable. So it's just being quite routine. Routines help for me. I've always been a routine person.
Sure.
But every month I do go through and I look back, what was a waste of time, what didn't work, and how do I improve? So it's that continuous improvement as well. So that's my last Sunday of the month. I sit down and go through both work and life. And my husband, we do it together because this is a partnership. There's no way I could do my job without his support, and he is incredible. So we just make sure, like I do at work, look back, look forward. How's it all going? So communication on top of all of it is really important.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Given you emphasized exercise and sleep, I would guess, have you got a wearable?
I have a Garmin watch. So I often worry about my sleep score, though. I don't know if it gives me more anxiety about my sleep score.
It can get a bit addictive, that can't. You've got to be careful. What are you most excited about, Kate, in terms of AI? And I'm not talking about accountancy or Xero at all. I'm talking about general society, business, productivity, whatever. Just what do you think is going to be the biggest benefit to you in terms of AI or to society?
So for me, I think if we get it right and we get it, as we talked about, small businesses are so different. But if we can give it to small businesses in a way that makes sense for them, they are the most time poor. We did a research study that said it's probably about a Wednesday at lunchtime before small businesses actually start doing their proper job because of all the admin. Imagine taking out those 2.5 days of admin for small businesses with AI, the productivity gains that we'd have from small businesses and how the economy could bounce back. Like, that for me is really exciting. Like I say, small businesses are the backbone of the economy. If we put them at the front and center, we give them the AI, the education, we make use cases for them. We could be, I'm hoping from a UK British perspective, it's been a tough ride for many small businesses. It's been a tough ride for us as an economy. How do we get that back? So that's actually what excites me about the power of AI.
Yeah. What are you most fearful of then?
I'm most fearful that we forget small businesses in this, and then we just put into big businesses, that there's not the education, support, incentives to get small businesses using this, so they get forgotten, and the disparity that already exists between big businesses and small businesses extends.
Looking back now over your career so far, and I know you've got a hell of a long way to go, Kate, but looking back in your armchair now over the last whatever amount of years, if you were to have a conversation with your 21-year-old self, okay,
Yeah.
what advice would you give to that person, knowing what you know now?
Trust your gut with the people that you work with. So I had a few jobs where I thought the opportunity sounded brilliant on paper, but my gut was like, I'm not sure this person, they're not my people, they're not my tribe. And I took the job and I quickly realized they weren't my tribe. So again, I go back to just trust your gut on the people, because they're the people that make you happy. Life to me is about people. Even though I work for a technology company, it will always come back to people.
Brilliant advice. And let's finish on this one, Kate. We always ask the guests to give us a little bit of a recommendation in terms of a book or a piece of content, if you're not a reader, that has inspired you recently.
Oh, the name of it. There's a recent book. And I can't remember the name of it. But basically, I'll describe it. And I think it's called The Woman. But essentially, it was about a nurse who went to the Vietnam War. She was a nurse throughout that war. And they were the unsung heroes, and they weren't recognized when they came back from the war, even though obviously the American soldiers were. And it just talks to what they did, how they weren't recognized, mental health. It was just a very inspiring book about, women and the future they've paved and everything like that. So it was a great read, and it's awful that I can't remember the author of it.
No, I can help you on that. It's The Woman by Kristin Hannah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, that was my favourite book so far this last few months.
I'm just quick at Googling things, so I'm not. I haven't read it.
You haven't read it? Well, I recommend you read it. So
is it it's a fiction book?
Fiction
I take it,
book.
Is it? Yeah. Oh, we haven't had many fiction books in this question. Yeah. So as answers to this question. So that's I think that might be a first.
The reason I do fiction books is because I think everyone can say about the latest thing they're reading about AI or tech or whatever. But I actually, for me, one of the things I do is I read a fiction book to switch off at night and to actually relate it back to people and humans. So absolutely. I find that inspiring to think about.
Absolutely. That's a brilliant take on it. Kate, I've so enjoyed this conversation. So what's next for Xero, and what kind of exciting stuff have you got coming up in the coming months?
Oh, so much coming up. I think XeroCon London will be next year, and that's where you'll hear some big announcements, but you'll see us shipping some new exciting product. We've got lots of betas coming out in the next couple of months as well. So if you haven't heard of it, any Xero customers, we have something called The Long and the Short of It, which will tell you everything that has shipped recently and everything that is going to be shipped in the next quarter. So if you want to dig into any detail, then I would go there.
Fantastic. Kate, thank you so much for joining us on the Tech Leaders podcast.
Thank you.
Wow, I really enjoyed that conversation. That was fab. So many bits and bobs to run through there. I think, what stood out, I think, in this conversation was Kate's passion for financial literacy, and especially her belief that it needs to start much earlier, which I totally agree with. She made a brilliant point, actually, about the culture here in the UK. We often avoid saying, I don't understand, or we don't like to admit making a mistake, especially when it comes to money, okay? And I think that will resonate with a lot of people. But that fear of getting it wrong can really hold people back, not just in business, but in life. And I think that is a bit of a problem in the UK, is that with just this fear of being vulnerable. I think if we can build financial confidence from a young age, like teaching young people how to manage money, take measured risks, and learn from failure, I think we'll have a generation that's not afraid of the numbers, but empowered by them. And I wouldn't be surprised if that resulted in more entrepreneurs and more entrepreneurship, and better entrepreneurs too. And I believe that's part of what the Know Your Numbers initiative and the Financial Literacy Task Force is all about. So but I thought that was absolutely fascinating. Kate is so passionate. It really came across as such a fascinating individual, and Xero are doing great things. So thank you to Kate for coming on, and thank you so much for listening. Please don't forget to leave us a review. obviously subscribe, or if you can engage with us in any way, it really helps us grow the podcast and give you more incredible guests like Kate. This episode was brought to you by Be Digital. Be Digital support leadership teams to optimize cost and get more out of technology investments. Be Digital and the team have unrivaled expertise with technology license management and data remediation, and are therefore perfectly positioned to help prepare organizations for AI technology capability. And on the last point, Be Digital have developed a cutting-edge AI readiness assessment, which provides tech leaders with a platform they need to make well-informed decisions about AI adoption strategy in 2024 and beyond. Go to Be Digital UK to find out more and get in touch.